We are recording. Hey everybody, I feel a little goofy wearing my podcast gear out here in the garage, but this is the first time I've done this. So the team at First Lite asked me to, originally this was supposed to be a short form content piece, 2 to 3 minutes, wanting to do a deep dive on the different layering systems as you transition through the season. Well, they have so many different SKUs of different clothing, and when you're talking about the entirety of a season, it's pretty hard to do a deep dive on layering systems in 2 to 3 minutes. So I thought I would shift this around a little bit and do however long it takes me, whether that's 30, 45 minutes, an hour. I'm just going to kind of like walk through. Maybe I'll surprise myself and only take 20 minutes. But I'm going to walk through all of the different pieces I have, and I understand that I am at an advantage here, being a First Lite ambassador. I get to use and test everything. So I'm going to stand here today and say, don't go out and buy every single piece. I tend to work my way through and use all the pieces throughout the year, but that's only because I get to, one, and it's a way to test it all and see what I think really works in the whitetail woods. So as we go through this, I'm going to talk about all the different layers, the different insulations and that kind of thing that you can use at different parts of the season. And then at the very end, I'll kind of give you like what would be my core takeaway and pieces that I would get if you were just trying to get set up with your kind of like first whitetail setup in the First Lite line. So we're just going to start at the beginning. We'll start with early season. So early season stuff, obviously, it's typically quite a bit warmer than the rest of the year, and so you're trying to use lightweight layers. First Lite has done a really good job of that. There's a lot of people that use First Lite stuff down in the South, Texas, hot areas, Arizona. A couple of years ago, they came out with the Trace Pant. So when it comes to pants, the Trace Pant is a really good setup, good lightweight setup, keep you cool. It was really cool how they did this. When they make the fabric, there is a fiber that melts at a lower melting point than the rest of the fabric, and they weave that in there in a cross pattern. And so that way, when they get to the end of the production, they heat the pants up enough, and that thread actually just melts away. And it leaves more or less like a perforated kind of finish on this, and it's hard to see on camera, but it just looks like a little grid pattern where that thread has come out. So as far as keeping you very cool and like in the hunt, if it's hot, the Trace Pant is awesome. Have hunted early season North Dakota. I know there's a lot of people that hunt early season like Kentucky and Tennessee for their velvet hunts. So if you do any of that, the Trace Pant, if you're hunting, 90 degrees, the Trace Pant is a really good one. As far as other layers for early season stuff, my go-to has always been the Wick Hoody. So I am a major believer in merino wool. I was a merino wool sales rep for a while, way back in 2013. And I just understand all the properties of merino wool, the fact that it works well in heat and cold climates. It pulls moisture off your body. Moisture can actually pass through the fiber, and so it dries out quickly and has that cooling factor. It also, if it gets wet and it's cold out, it'll still hold 80% of its heat even when it's wet. It can hold up to 30% of its weight in water before it feels damp to the touch. So as far as like a natural fiber that is kind of like a miracle fiber, merino is hard to beat. And yes, it is expensive, but that's expensive because most of the good merino comes from New Zealand, and it's expensive to ship it in and have it processed. So it is an amazing fiber in the Wick line, whether that be the hoodie or the crew neck or anything in that Wick line is awesome for early season. If you don't like wearing wool, obviously First Lite has some synthetic layers. So like the Trace quarter zip kind of matches that same pant where you've got like that perforated. This is super lightweight, super breathable. I tend to lean more heavily on the merino stuff. I think it's just the way I sweat. I tend to make the synthetics stink a lot faster than I do merino, because merino also has scent control qualities. So the bacteria that causes scent actually can't build up on merino. And so you end up with a garment that will not really stink, which is awesome. So that is the Trace quarter zip. So if we're talking early season, so the Trace pant, Trace quarter zip, anything in that, just if you're trying to continue to keep your body breathing, those pieces are really good. The other pant that came out before the Trace pant that would have been like more of your lightweight option is the Obsidian Foundry. So these are kind of a combo pant between, you have merino in the places where you want it to breathe, and then you have reinforced nylon where you want stuff to hold up better. So in the seat and in the knees are reinforced that fabric. And so that way the original Obsidian pant is a great pant, but it does have a shelf life, especially if you're walking through any sort of brush. So this is kind of a really great compromise between having some of those tougher layers, but still having a nice breathable pant. When the First Lite Whitetail line came out, I wore these a ton because they were they're just so nice and breathable and comfortable. The fit and finish on them is really nice. So if you're looking for like that kind of all-around pant, the Obsidian Foundry is a really one to go with. So that's kind of like your lightweight setup. In addition to the line this year in that lightweight setup, especially if you're like me and like a built-in face mask, the all-new Approach hoodie. So I wore one of these during turkey season all spring in the Fusion pattern, and just got one in Spectre because I'll be hunting early season whitetails again. And honestly, like, one of my favorite pieces of First Lights in the whitetail line across the board has been the Origin hoodie. And for early season stuff, it's just a little hot. It's got some minimal like wind breaking qualities, and just like not that everything that you want from the Origin hoodie where you go into the later season is a little bit too much for that early season stuff. So this Approach hoodie is great, especially if you do any spot and stock hunting. If you're on the move, still having that built-in face mask right there into the hood is awesome. And it's nice and lightweight and breathable. Just giving you an additional layer to put on. Like right now the days are in the 60s and 70s, but then they cool down into the 50s in the evening. And so if I hike in Trace pants and the Trace quarter zip, get into the tree, waiting for a deer, like as that temp starts to cool, because I'm acclimated to that warmer temp, just adding this little bit of layer is going to help me kind of not feel like I'm getting cold into the night, because I haven't acclimated to the real cold stuff yet. But yeah, that's pretty much like the bulk of the stuff for the early season. Obviously, as the season continues on, you just continue to add more layers into that gear kit. So I don't remember if it was last year or the year before. I think it was last year that the 308 pant dropped. And I got to test this the year before. So these are the prototype model, and the 308 Whitetail Pant is the Whitetail Pant that I had been waiting for from First Lite since they launched the Spectre pattern. It's heavy duty enough to not worry about ripping it up on brush when you're hiking in and out of thick places, but it's lightweight enough where it doesn't feel like you're getting really, really sweated up on your way in and out of anything. It's got it's a 6-pocket pant, so the normal 308 pants do not have the cargo pockets on the front. They added that to the Whitetail Pant. You also have pockets on both pockets on the back of the pants here, which is nice. And then you have dual access pockets on those. So this is the same on the Trace pant, but you have dual access pockets. So you have a quiet button that you can open there, and then you can access that pocket from the top. But then you can also access that pocket from the inside. Now, the thought process on that was, if you are sitting on the stand or sitting down, reaching into the pockets on the front of the pants, this kind of like pinches against your skin. And so being able to reach in and grab stuff from this side. It also opens up a little ventilation. If you don't have anything in those pockets and you open the side vents, it does give you a little bit more airflow. So if you are hiking in and it's warm, you can open those heat dumps, open those interior vents, and create a lot more airflow around that big muscle group of your quads and thighs. Another pant that I don't wear a ton is the Origin pant. I have worn these later season when it starts to get a little bit colder, and I'll wear these kind of not under the 308 pant, but I'll hike in these, and then I'll throw on whatever outer layer I need to stay warm. But they do add a bit more warmth, and they've got basically gaiters on the bottom so they don't ride up your legs, but they're a very, very comfortable pant. in my eyes, I just don't see them as like a general hunting pant. Like I'm not going to hike in and hunt hard in these all day. That's what the 308 pant's built for. So getting into that mid-season stuff is going to be where most of you are going to build your kit out and around, is that mid-season. You know, from October, you know, kind of into that mid-November range. And so the kit that I would transition to is I would start 308 Whitetail Pant. As far as a base layer goes, I'm going to run the Wick base layer as long as I can. And as the temps start to drop, I try to trick my own body into acclimating faster. And so I will purposely not bring enough layers on a cold day. And so I'll kind of force myself to shiver for a day. And it is amazing how much faster you acclimate to cold temps if you're not trying to just stay warm that entire, like immediately. So if you can force yourself to be uncomfortable for just one hunt, you kind of like get yourself geared up for the rest of the season, and then you don't have to use as much clothing because most of the time we are tricking ourselves to feel like it's colder than it really is. So mid-season setup. So Wick base layer until it starts to get really cold. 308 Whitetail Pant is going to be my go-to pant. And then for a top, I'll do obviously Wick base layer, and then on top of that, I'm going to use the Approach hoodie as long as I can this year. And then because it's nice and lightweight, and I like to not have I try to keep the amount of bulk, especially on my upper body, to a minimum. And if I can use the Approach hoodie kind of into that late October, early November time frame, and then just add insulation layers on top of that if it keeps getting colder, I don't have to switch over to that Origin hoodie. The Origin hoodie is still super nice, and I will wear it a lot because it's just a very comfortable, soft, and quiet piece. So this is going to be like go-to in the rut, go-to in the pre-rut would be the like Approach hoodie. So as far as mid-weight insulation, so you go Wick, Approach, or Origin, and then mid-weight insulation. This is a piece that just dropped. This is the Navigator Hoody. So this is a quarter zip. It's like a micro puffy kind of feel. I'm trying to describe, like the inside is like a lofted, but it's like a waffle fleece kind of. Very, very comfortable piece. It's also super quiet and incredibly lightweight and packable. So, you know, heat to weight performance ratio is awesome on this piece. I haven't put a ton of hours behind it, but the little that I have worn it, it has been like, it's just a very comfortable piece. I wore it a little bit during spring turkey season, and will wear it quite a bit more during the archery season now, just to get a better feel for it. But if I was going to choose one, just because I have more time put in behind it, if I'm going to choose one, I'm going to go with the Source jacket as my midweight insulation. This is also kind of like a micro puffy. It has minimal windbreaking qualities, but it has the like a very soft face material. The inside is like it's not a lofted fleece, but it's kind of like a fleecy feeling piece. And then, but everything about it is quiet, and that's what I like the most. So the zipper's super quiet. Just like it was built with silence in mind. So when it comes to being like having an insulating, like quiet layer, the Source jacket or the Source vest are just absolute money. Okay, so on top of that, we're talking about like October. The outer layer that I would wear the most is this is just a windbreaking layer. So you have a fleece exterior, like a brushed fleece exterior. This is the Phase setup. So you have Phase jacket, Phase bibs. These two together are awesome. If you are somebody who hates having extra bulky material, the Phase would be the way to go. And one thing you can do with the Phase is, because that's windproof, you can simply treat it as that shell and then layer underneath appropriately to match the conditions. So rather than jumping right into a heavier weight coat and jacket that's insulated itself, you can use that Phase down into colder temperatures if you're willing to layer up a little bit more underneath. You know, maybe you switch to the either a kiln base layer or a furnace base layer, or stack a wick and a kiln, or a wick and a furnace, depending on how cold it is out, and then have those insulating layers underneath this phase. If you're just using the phase kind of on top of a lightweight underlayer, you're probably going to only want to hunt down into like maybe the 50s or the high 40s, where you would just feel comfortable with having basically just like pants and a top and then the phase stuff. You can kind of push that limit of the temp rating on this by properly layering underneath. So the more you can kind of bulk out your layering kit, the more comfortable you are through the whole season. So a lot of times, what I like to do, especially if it's not like really cold or windy, is I might jump into the bibs, but I really like not having an outer jacket on. And the bibs run nice and high, they sit up about mid-chest, and so you can kind of cut that wind off your legs and your chest and your core, and then using like something like the Source jacket or the Source vest, the Origin hoodie, to keep a lot of that core heat in. But this just adds one more layer of protection to keep you warm, and then you can withstand lower temperatures and still have your upper body able to move, grab your bow, be quiet. You're not rubbing against the tree with a bulky coat. So you can kind of push the limits of that phase temperature rating. If you were only going to buy one, and I'm going to go back, and so as far as like base layers on the legs, the rest of the season ends up being the same for me. So I'm just picking either, depending on the temp range, whatever I feel like I can get away with. I am doing either a wick. I typically only do a wick base layer on my bottoms. If it's really cold, I'll jump right to the furnace. But wick base layer, the 308 pant, and then I'll do a wick top. If it's really cold, like I said, I would go with furnace, but that part of it doesn't shift all that much. It just changes what I'm going to do in like the middle layer. So definitely switching to the Origin hoodie as I'm getting later in the rut, and then going into December, there's no way I'm doing any lightweight stuff. But for that biggest bulk of the season, and I'll go back and put together like a kit of like what I think would get you through basically the majority of most places. But the next jump up in insulation is the core set. So this is the vest. The core set comes, you can either get it in a jacket, you can get bibs, and then a jacket or a vest, or both. I love having the vest because, again, I'm just going to reiterate, I like having as little clothing on top as possible for that articulation. It makes drawing a bow easier. It makes, if you're in a saddle, it makes everything pinch a little bit less, and so you're still able to move quite a bit. But as far as like the insulated outer layers that are going to get you through a bigger chunk of your season, on the front end and back, you might be a little warm if it's warm out, a little cold if it's really cold out. Again, you can address that by adding proper insulation underneath. But the core set is awesome. It has the same face fabric as the Source. So again, super quiet, and the zippers are super quiet on everything. You can, I always roll this stuff up on the back of my backpack and hike it in when I'm going in. I'm not wearing my outer layers to the bottom of the tree. I would die of sweat. But this stuff is not overly bulky, which is really nice. It's still windproof. It's not waterproof, but I have hunted in some pretty major rainstorms and have not gotten absolutely soaked. So it does have water resistant qualities. It has the kit link. All of the outer layers have the kit link, so you can reach into those interior pockets. You have a little bit of fleece on this kit link, and then you have magnets inside here, so you can reach inside, keep those hands nice and warm. You've got pockets on both sides there. You have, and I did a whole video on all the outer layers, so this is more about what I'm transitioning to, not a breakdown of each piece. So again, if it starts to get colder, I like to just throw on the bibs, and these feel like it's almost like a sleeping bag. They add a ton of warmth, and then they do run nice and high, and so I will run the bibs and then maybe the vest, but only when it starts to get real cold, I'm going to jump to that jacket. And again, just like the phase, you can push that core further down the line in the temp rating, so you can use it when it's colder. I don't remember what the temp rating is on these, but you can, by properly layering underneath, and if you want to really like jump into the next level, like adding some hand warmers into some of the interior pockets and stuff, just to hold a little bit more heat around that core and in places where it's going to keep your body warmer, that makes a huge difference. So having the core and a muff full of hand warmers, you can hunt some pretty dang cold temps. But now, if we're talking like December, January stuff where you're hunting in the negatives, the only way to go is to go to that Thermic. So everything else stays the same as far as like base insulation, furnace top and bottom for insulation, 308 pant, Origin hoodie, source jacket, and then the Thermic jacket and bibs. And then this is literally like a absolute cocoon of heat around you. It's a lofted fleece inside. It's a kind of a smoother finish on the outside, so it's like not quite as, it's not like the source jacket. It's a little bit sleeker, and I think that has to do more with like the windproofing material that they have sandwiched in there. And so it's just like increasing the amount of heat retention that you're going to get because it's such a big burly piece. But have hunted in some crazy cold temperatures in this and have felt very comfortable. Now, as far as accessories go, these I've been wearing for like 5 years, so they're all beat up. But the glove with thumb and finger cutout, that is awesome if you're an archer. So able to clip on to your release, have that dexterity. If you want a little bit more coverage in a glove, I tend to just bring a muff or have if it's cold, I have hand warmers in the kangaroo pocket on the bibs or the jacket. But I do like carrying a muff. But for the gloves, at least, you can switch to one that has the over mitt, and you can tuck your hand under there. And these are cool because they have magnets on the back. But the guy who designed these was like, I wanted you to be able to one-handed get this muff off and get them flipped back. So you can, if you're sitting there, you have a deer coming in, you don't need to be making the movement, or you're holding your bow in your other hand and you're trying to keep your release hand warm. You can still flip that back and then hook on and draw back. So that's a pretty cool feature of those. Before that, you have just like the fingerless gloves. I've worn those a ton for archery hunting. And then other accessories, you have merino beanie. I think one of the biggest game changers as far as staying warm on stand when the temps get cold is this cold weather balaclava. So they make multiple different like weights of these, but this one, it is incredible how warm this is. And throwing that on and then throwing a beanie on top, and then if you get, pro tip, put a hand warmer inside this right on the back of your head. You can withstand pretty much any temp. This thing cuts the wind. It's got to be my favorite accessory for starting to hunt colder weather, especially if it's windy. And then the muff is a no-brainer. A lot of times what I'll do in the mornings, like if we're hunting stuff that's like, down into the teens and 20s, 30s, I'll open a whole bunch of hand warmers. Don't do 1 or 2 hand warmers. That's another tip. Open 10. They're not that expensive. And you can open 10, put them in a Ziploc, tighten that Ziploc down so there's no air, because the hand warmers need air. And then shove that Ziploc inside this muff. And so that way when you get to the stand, you throw that on, you crack that Ziploc open, you pull all the hand warmers out, and then as they warm up in the muff, you start moving around to different pockets in your kit. Put one in the back of your head, put one back by your kidneys, and move those around, and you can kind of create this whole extra set of warmth around. And just like, it's just one way to, I think the more comfortable you can keep yourself, the clothing does an incredible job at regulating temperature. But when you start to get cold, being able to take your mind off being cold, will keep you more mentally in the game. You'll be able to stay longer. And that's what all of this does, is learning the layering system that works for you is going to help you stay in the game longer. And for any of you that have spent a lot of time whitetail hunting, sometimes it is just a grind. Sometimes it's just day after day after day of being in the woods, and you need stuff that's going to keep you comfortable. So I promised that I would do a kind of a breakdown of the kit that I would get if I was just getting into this, and what's going to cover a big chunk of your season, or should cover the main bulk of your season. So we're going to start. I'm going to get rid of the Thermic, because most people don't hunt anywhere that's actually cold enough for how good that stuff is. Okay. So for pants, it's going to be the 308 pant. That is the one that you want. For a top, you're going to start with a Wick Hoody or a Wick crew. If you don't like stacking hoods kind of on top of each other, get the Wick crew neck long sleeve. Then on top of that, I am going to say this now. Again, this is for like to cover the bulk of your season. I'm going to say the Origin hoodie on top of that. For a midweight insulator, it's going to be, this is a tough choice. For a midweight insulator, if you like a jacket that you can just zip up, or if you don't mind throwing on a quarter zip that you have to pull over, one of these two. So you're either going to do the Navigator hoodie or the Source jacket. That's going to be your midweight insulator. And then for an outer layer, it's going to be the core set. And if you're just buying a couple of the core pieces, get the core bibs and the core jacket. If it's warmer out and you still need an outer layer, you can layer less underneath. If it's getting colder out and it's kind of beyond the temp rating of the core, you can layer up more underneath. So that's going to be your outer layer. For accessories, I would say the archer's glove or the ones with the mitts, if you like that. Get yourself a nice merino beanie or one of the Spectre ball caps. I pretty much wear this every time I'm in the whitetail woods. And I always wear a brimmed cap, and then I'll throw a beanie over the top. I think I like having something that blocks the sun. And then if you hunt anywhere that gets cold, get that cold weather. I think it's the Tundra cold weather balaclava. Get that. That's going to help you get through that later stuff in the season. So, but that would be my kit if it was the first time buying anything from First Lite, and I'm like, okay, I want to put together a whitetail kit that's going to get me through from October 1 until the end of November. That's the kit. Obviously, you can make changes based on your geographical location. If you hunt further south, you might not need the core kit. Simply using something like the Phase is going to be enough. If you hunt further north than I typically do, if you're hunting Canada, if you're hunting, like really, really cold temps, northern Minnesota, late season type stuff, January hunts in North Dakota, the Thermic stuff might be the answer, especially if you are just a late season guy or gal. If you are a late season hunter, the Thermic stuff is awesome. But that's it. I think there's definitely more pieces out there, SKUs in this whitetail space, but this is everything I had in the garage today. So that's a pretty in-depth rundown on all of the First Lite whitetail stuff. If you have any questions, post them below. Happy to answer anything I can when it comes to this. Also, click that link below. That'll take you directly to the website, the First Lite website, and you can shop everything there. It's a pretty extensive system, and they're constantly reworking and coming up with new layers and different stuff to make all of you more comfortable in the woods. So hope you got a lot of information from that. Again, happy to answer any questions I can. Thanks. I will see you on the next video.